Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the February 22nd Board of Assessors meeting for the town of Stockbridge.
Morning. Last meeting minutes, there are two things on here, the annual report and the overlay letter that we'll get to. The board, number two, the board has to sign abatement certificates for new singular wireless. Those were the ones that you agreed on for the appellate tax board. So those cases are withdrawn now.
And so the amount abated was like $248.78.
Yeah, remember when we talked about splitting it down the middle for the agreement? So that's what those are for 3 different years. 14, 15, and 17
Yeah.
fiscal years.
So there's 3 of them. So,
There's 3, yep.
yeah, so it's, the total abatements for all 3 are less than $2,000. Okay.
And that will clear us up with them for all the fiscal years. Because we did 18, 19, and 20 last year. So here's the number 3, the overlay letter. Mike Canales was in at our last meeting to discuss transferring, releasing $20,000 from the fiscal year 18 overlay account to the overlay surplus. So that will be available for funding certain items that we're gonna need for our certification for fiscal year 23 at the town meeting. So I showed this memo to him, and he thought it was fine. It's to our accountant, and I CC'd it to him, releasing the $20,000 from the overlay. And what's gonna happen next is, Erica's not here, she had her baby, but typically she's the one that will check the amount in the overlay, but Cheryl and her will check it, Cheryl will check it, and Mike will verify it. And if for some reason there's not that fund in there, then we'll take it from several different years. Even though it's one account, we're still tracking it as individual accounts. Number 4, the annual report, I had emailed that to you guys, and I changed that line that you wanted and I submitted it. It was due today.
Perfect.
Yep. And I added this, the other column, because at our last meeting, you suggested that we add the previous fiscal year 21's levy amounts and parcel counts. So I added those, and I think that's a good idea to keep doing that. I think, Gary, you said it would be a good idea for everybody to do that.
Yeah.
And I agree. I like that idea.
They have a point of reference.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Means a lot more when you can compare them.
Yep. So that has been submitted to the selectmen. Number 5 is, I don't know if you remember back in 2017, we issued abatements to Verizon New England. Verizon New England is a 505 utility, just like Tennessee Gas. Those are set by the Department of Revenue. So we get the value from the DOR every year with the amount of new growth, if any, that we use for that fiscal year. And we typically just put that into the system and we run with it. Back in, I believe it was 2014, Verizon took the DOR to court, and because of their valuation method, and they came to a settlement. So anyone that had Verizon New England in their community, which I would think is every community, had to agree to issue refunds. I think ours was around 3,000 at that point, but it covered fiscal 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. So it was a 5-year. They literally took them to court, to the appellate tax board every year over the valuation, and the DOR decided, they agreed on how to value it. It's different than the other utilities that we're paying for appraisals for. So the DOR just sent a memo informing the assessor's offices that they're now working with Verizon again to avoid going to court. So I just wanted to make you guys aware that we don't have to do anything. It's just that if we decide that we're not happy with what the DOR is doing, then it's up to the towns to hire, just like we did. We would step away and we'd be on our own for valuing those utilities. Not the greatest idea. They recommend in their letter, which I'll leave for you guys to read if you want, that we continue with the method that we're using. It's not going to be us losing any money. It's just, at this point, there's no refunds or anything that have to be given out. It's just them working with Verizon. They wanted to notify us. There's probably some communities that have not gone with the DOR's values over the years, and they have to prove the DOR wrong regardless of what method they're using. And those are probably going to be the communities that still are going to not go along with this. We have always gone along with it. So at this point, again, there's nothing that we have to do. If we choose not to, then we would have to do something. We would have to make it clear to them that we don't agree with their valuation method. And at this point, as far as I'm concerned, I wouldn't know what the difference is between, you can have an appraisal done, it could come back lower than the number that the state is coming up with. It's almost like just throwing caution to the wind.
So in theory, the DOR does their evaluation for us for free?
Yeah, they do. There's two 505, well, actually there's three 505 utilities. There's level 3 communication, which is so small. It's part, there's two of them. It was part of Pittsfield Cellular. They broke off. Verizon New England, Tennessee Gas Pipeline, which runs, through a lot of properties. Those valuations have always come from the Department of Revenue, typically around July or August. And they basically, what will happen is they will fill in the LA4, which is our totals, with those numbers. If the board were to decide that they didn't want those numbers to reflect the numbers that the DOR came up with, we have to prove to the DOR within that period, before we get the tax rate set, that we don't agree with those numbers, that they should be higher. And then you would have to basically go through an appeal with the DOR and Verizon.
So in theory, we could do it free with a DOR, or we'd have to hire an independent contractor to do that evaluation?
Yes, right. I think there was some fear with the assessors, when this initial agreement back in 2017, that this was a sign that the DOR is now going to throw this to the towns to do, kind of like what they did with the 504 utilities, Berkshire Gas, Western Mass, and National Grid, where we're now responsible every year for coming up with those values. That's one thing, but the Verizon New England and Tennessee Gas, the amount of time and money that would take to do appraisals on those types of properties, they don't use that 50-50 split method that we use or that the appraisal company, RRC, uses to value the 504s. It is a very specific, very complicated system that, in my opinion, let them work that out, as long as I don't think the DOR is going into this thinking we want to cheat the towns out of, money for their utilities. I would think that if we saw a constant fiscal year to fiscal year lowering of that value, then we should be concerned. But if we're getting, told that they're doing projects, the new growth number is up, or at least remaining, steady from what it was the year before, then I think we're okay with it. In the memo itself from the DOR, it says, if you're not sure about this, then maybe you should review it with your town council. Mike and I will discuss this, I'm sure, at one point, but it's no different than what they sent out in 2017 when they came up with this agreement. And again, Verizon is a tax-paying entity. They can, regardless of whether we're valuing it or the DOR, they have every right to take it to the appellate tax board or the appeals court beyond that. If they choose to, this is a way of avoiding that. And I would think that with all the pressure now of doing the 504 utilities, where every community has to hire an appraiser to do it, or risk valuing those properties themselves and not getting their values or their tax rate set in a timely manner, that this is something that we should, go along with. at least for the next few fiscal years and see what, I think they're trying to do it for, starting in 22 and going through either 27 or 28. So we'd have to look at that. I don't see anything that you have to sign, but there might be something down the road. I'll do a little bit more research and digging on that to see if it's an actual contract that the town has to do. I didn't see that, but it's possible that it might be.
So I wonder if we should take a vote, or if we want to take a vote next meeting about this, if people want to review it more. But I mean, if we don't, I don't know. I guess we don't have to take a vote, but if,
I would say that
by not taking a vote is the same as status quo. So,
Right. I mean, I would say we could table it until the next meeting. If you guys want to review the memo, I can email it to you. And then you can look at it and, we'll, and actually I have the agreement also flagged in our ATB file and it goes back to 2017 if you want to take a look at that. I don't think you need to do anything right now, at this moment. I just wanted to make you aware of it because, I have a Zoom meeting this afternoon with the Berkshire County Assessors Association. I'm sure this will come up and I will fill you guys in on what happens at that meeting. Because this went out to all 351 communities, whether you have Verizon or not.
sounds good.
Number 6, our deeds are off and away. The map changes and the deeds are with CAI. We should be getting a notice from them that they hopefully received our box of deeds and changes. As soon as those come back, I'll tell you guys because there will be some changes that have to be made on the system. And there were, like I said at the last meeting, the most changes I have ever seen in my 27 years here with sales and not so much map changes, but there were a few. 7, Tom, I again put it on the list. I don't know if you have any updates.
Well, there are a couple openings on the pilot committee, and Board of Selectmen has put out a notice. I suggested that they may want to have Mike serve on it on their behalf, but they decided to put out a notice first. And once that's set, I'm going to send out the questionnaire and we'll be off and running again.
Okay.
So who currently serves on that committee?
Pardon?
Who serves on the committee?
Well, right now, it's just Jay and myself. And so we will,
Sounds good. That's Jay Bukowski.
Gary is going to attend one more meeting, but not officially.
So that's Jay Bukowski,
Yeah.
yourself?
That's right, yeah. Gusky.
Okay.
I'd like to have at least one person representing the not-for-profits, and I have one person in mind, but I'll need to reach out to her.
Okay.
Speaking of nonprofits, the 3 ABC forms, I didn't put it on here. They're due March 1st, but I don't know if I mentioned it to you before. We included when we sent out the 3 ABC form, we did put a specific item on the letter that was attached to the form stating that the Board of Assessors would like to know the usage of every single parcel. Because we had discussed that before, and Mike had actually mentioned to me that the Board of Selectmen were hoping that we would follow through on that. And so far, some of them are cooperating. I think it's going to mean even after the March 1st deadline, because we have gotten a few extensions, maybe sending out another letter from the board stating, we had previously asked what the usage was and it wasn't clear what they are. We really need to have that information back.
Well,
Just wanted to make sure, just in case anyone's listening, that's important, that we have that usage, the use of the exempt parcels, even if it's a land conservancy group, just a quick mention, and it can be on a spreadsheet or a letter. It doesn't matter as long as you guys know what these parcels are continually being used for and what they're supposed to be being used for under the exemption guidelines, tax exemption guidelines.
Just an addendum to what I was just reporting. I neglected to say that Peter Strauss is also on the pilot committee.
Oh, okay.
Sorry for that.
Okay, so we do have to go into, for the abatements, there are some that have to be, there's not a lot left. They have to be voted on, and there's one that wants to meet with you on our next meeting, which is March 7th, and that will be the last time that we can actually discuss these and act on them. You guys can. But there's at least one or two that have got to be done today to meet the guideline or to meet the deadline. So Gary, if you want.
The deadline is how many days from receipt?
You have 30 days from the day of the date on the tax bill. You guys have 90 days from that date.
At this point, then I'd entertain a motion to close the public portion of our meeting and to enter into executive session per MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A7, to continue to review real and personal abatement applications before us.
So move.
And we're not coming back?
And we're not coming back into public session.
Second, then?
Yeah. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.